Hey, good afternoon, folks. Friday, I'm back. I was actually here last week, but couldn't do the top 10. So, can you hear me? It's been so long. I want to make sure my voice is, right at the right level.
Is that MJIC? They can see you.
Can you hear me, though?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Well, look, today we're kind of like a MASH unit. We are down 2 producers, Andrew, and assorted other people. So I think we're going to be speeding through this really quickly so I can go on and do other things. So let's start with 2 announcements. One, small one. The top 10-ish this week is actually 10 items. I don't remember the last time we did a top 10-ish that actually had 10 items. Second, and far more importantly, there'll be another weekend test this weekend, 12 to 3 tomorrow. So come on in on the builds we've been testing. Top 10-ish. What?
Hey Brian, shoot me the link to if there's a forum post about it or something.
No, this is just happening now.
Okay.
Yeah. So top 10-ish. Number 1, testing. So this week, as you folks have seen and participated in, we've been testing pretty much every day. Testing on Saturday. So all is well. Lots of testing. Just as we promised, we would have weeks where there weren't a lot, and then weeks where we'd be back to doing a lot. This is one of those weeks where we're running tests, again, almost every day. Number 2, Rubble. We're getting close, really close. So it's just a matter of Andrew continuing to work on his code, and a couple more weeks I hope at worst, and you guys will have chunks falling with the building. Number 3, building server. So additional work is being done on that. Once Andrew's Rubble code is in, we'll be able to get Colin's building server up and running. Number 4, coherent. So yeah, this has been a little longer, not much yet, not yet, than we thought it would be, but moving along quite nicely. Moving along so well, actually, that it's exposed other things that needed to be fixed. So hopefully, within the next 2 weeks, we can actually remove Ceph entirely. Number 5, ability builder and system improvements. This is an ongoing item, and Caleb's first part of Caleb's work on the editor is done, and he and Rob are going back to work on a practical skill implementation for the first new class trios. First class of the trio, excuse me. Number 6, statuses. So Rob has completed integrating all the status systems work from Christina into the skills format, allowing them to work seamlessly. Number 7, characters 2.0, another ongoing item. The ongoing character updates to our new master rig with the generic male and female meshes were completed, along with a rough pass on the male Viking medium armor. Number 8, character animation updates. This is again another ongoing item. Variable animation timing for weapon and additional mage animations got underway this week. So, of course, good things, continuing to improve existing animations and getting ready to get the mages in there. So, number 9, audio fixes. Dave and DB have been busily working on fixing some audio and sound effect bugs that emerged this week, particularly around combat music and certain skills. And last and certainly not least, stuck improvements. So obviously, as you guys and gals know, we've had some people who've been taking advantage of stuck, sometimes under the guise of, oh, I was just testing it, another time to get out of combat. So we've been making some changes to that. This is not unexpected. Didn't want to have to do it so soon, but okay, we're doing it now instead of later. So, hey, that's it. Top 10-ish and 2 announcements in just about 5 minutes, which is probably a record. Like I say, I have a lot to do. Still, not sure we're going to get an update out. If we don't, I'll have less to do. But I'm certainly going to try to get one out. So let's do a 25-minute Q&A. So go, go, go.
All right. So that means we're ending at 4:30, right?
Yes.
Okay. I blinked. When did the top 10 start?
Yeah, that was quick.
Okay. Camelot asks, you mentioned mages being the first class to go in with ability builder abilities. Does this mean the ability builder is going in first, or do you mean that mages will be the only classes with ability builder abilities and the rest will have presets? Say that
No, everybody will have, of course. Well, everyone will eventually be able to use the ability builder. To do otherwise would be silly. But we're just working on mages right now.
Odilvik asks, given the new death animations, will any classes get feign death?
I don't see why not.
Necron asks, did you already come to a closer decision for choosing Vulcan over DX?
Oh, no, God. We haven't talked about that in quite a while. Right now, our focus is obviously getting to the 64-bit client as quickly as possible. After that, we'll see next year. We're certainly not going to do anything immediately. We've been promising you folks that we needed to get to the 64-bit client, repay some tech debt, and that's what we've been doing. We're not looking to add more of that sort of stuff right now. We want to repay the tech debt that we've said we were going to repay. We need to get the 64-bit client done, and as much as possible focus on gameplay and making beta more fun.
Curly asks, I have applied to one of your open job positions earlier this week. When could I expect to hear a response?
It depends when you applied, Curly. And it depends what position you applied for. I know that, let's see, it was about 12 o'clock today, maybe a little earlier. I replied on a bunch of associated producer candidates. So if that was one of the positions, if that was a position you applied for, you might hear from Anna today. Most likely you'll hear from her on Monday, though we had a lot of candidates and I am still thinking about several of them. We've decided to move forward with some, had to say no to some other candidates. So those are the only ones that I've been involved in terms of stuff coming in from the web. If you came in via certainly a recruiter, then you should be able to get an answer immediately from them.
Abducted Gaming asks, random video question. In the game, do you think there is a desire and place for including things like cinematic videos as used in some other MMOs, or will that be outside the scope of what is intended for CU?
Certainly outside the scope for what is intended. Could it be cool to add some things? Absolutely. It's not a focus for us. Those things can be, both consumptive of time and money, and not add a lot. On the other hand, I think if you were remember the things we've talked about using cameras within the depths, so I think that would, come close in some ways to having, some cinematics, especially if they turn out as fun as we hope. But in terms of anything major, not what we are focusing on, or actually, let me go further with that. Not even something that I really think is even semi-important for this game. I'd rather use the money that we'd have to spend on that for other things that would be more interesting and more, more interesting and more core to the central principles and mechanics of this game, which is, of course, RVR.
Strike JK asks, with Rubble being in the game soon, does Andrew fear for his beard already?
So you'll have to ask him about that. I think his initial certainly intention was to remove the beard. I am not sure if that is still his intention. We'll see. I honestly don't know.
Odilvik asks, will you have in-game player feedback pop-up questions during certain activities in B1 or later?
Oh, especially during RVR. I think at the height of combat, we should really make sure to bother you folks with questions. Hey, you having fun? Hey, you having no? Certainly, we're going to have that stuff. It's a joke. Okay, I'm rusty. It's been 2 weeks. We're certainly going to have that sort of stuff in there. How soon? Not a focus, but certainly at some point during Beta 1, we'll be talking about that more.
Lotoween asks, when you reopen a swag store, is there any chance we could get contact stickers for the back window of our SUVs to build CU families, like you see for stick figures and Star Wars?
Yes.
I hadn't actually thought about that. John is in the background going, yes! Yeah, why not? I think that's a great idea. I think that's cool. I hadn't actually thought about that. That'd be kind of funny for us to do. Good idea.
Isvrada asks, I want to ask about NPE, New Player Experience. Are there any plans to create in-game tutorial or guides to show how systems work, like ability builder tutorials for new users, or are you guys going to approach this with tutorials and guides out of the game?
Well, both, because in the game and out of the game are sort of not as relevant in terms of 2019 or 2020, simply because that kind of tech to do that we already have. It's not 2001. So, will we have guides? Absolutely. Will we have video tutorials? I certainly hope so. Especially on the guide part, whether it's for our ability builder or even for the character creation, since we've said right from the beginning that this is a game that doesn't really specialize in hand-holding and will allow you to gimp your characters. That sort of thing is kind of paramount, kind of important, kind of like crucial. Otherwise, players have a right to complain. As opposed to just complaining because they think it's their right. So yes, we indeed want to have that for game launch.
Strike asks, what do you think about the idea of using the already established mini CU cartoon figures, like the countdown timer to B1D1, to explain abilities and gameplay elements in CU, like cartoon snippets in Fallout, but CU style?
That could be fun. I honestly haven't thought about that. But that could be a lot of fun.
Kid92 asks, is Siege Mage a playstyle that your systems will allow? I love the idea of a fragile mage in the far backlines casting super long spells to hurl fiery boulders at castle walls.
Oh, absolutely. I've talked about that since the beginning. The idea of whether it's a paper cannon or just a mage that really does have a specialty in hurling those kind of attacks, as well as working with other mages of the same type. Yeah, no, I absolutely want that. Definitely on my must-have list for mages.
Odilvik asks, when a tower collapses, who do you plan to take the most damage? The person the tower falls on, the person that was standing on the tower, or the person in a room halfway up the tower? Or are they all equally smeared, like layers of jam in a rubble cake? Oh, I like that visual.
Yeah, that is a good visual. The insurance company, actually. Honestly, I haven't discussed that with anyone. I assume since we obviously have a physics system that the damage will depend on how far you fall, what lands on you, things like that. But not something we've actually, or I have been part of the discussions about.
Kaladex asks, do you expect the free aiming system will be used in conjunction with AoE abilities to hit people around cover whom they couldn't otherwise hit with hard targeting, Do you intend this, or do you want to avoid it?
Well, it depends on what you mean by free aiming. So, if you remember the alpha when we were playing mages, and you could simply hurl a spell up into the air and it lands where it lands. You can do, that as well with arrows in theory. So if you're saying, can you hit someone in cover who you couldn't hit with tab targeting because you threw a fireball up at a certain angle and then that's where it landed, that's fine. That's not cheating. That's not abusive. Obviously, if your cover is, for example, a building, well, no, that should not get through the building. On the other hand, if you're hiding behind a tree and the fireball now hits the base of the tree and there's damage that comes because of the fact that you're within range of the explosive damage from that fireball, I think that's perfectly fine. So if that's what you mean by free aiming, absolutely. If you, it would work the same way, for example, depending on whether we end up using the veil for stealth, as we've talked about, or whether you're in camouflage where you can't be seen. Targeting a spot essentially for damage because you threw something up at a certain angle and then it landed in a certain place, that's not cheating, that's not exploitive, that's how things work. So I have absolutely no issue with that. If, again, done within that framework. And by the way, sorry for interrupting, Max, but it's also true for castle sieges if you think about the inside of a keep, if it's uncovered, of course. We've said from the beginning that you can't, use tab targeting, or you can't even use, any sort of an aiming system to see inside the keep. But if you learn how to shoot properly with your whatever it is, whether it is a siege weapon or it is a spell, that's perfectly fine. You shouldn't be able to sit in the middle of a keep and think that just because nobody can actually see you there that you can't do damage. You can't be damaged, excuse me.
Knive asks, what kind of dynamic elements will be in Camelot Unchained? Will there be GM-run events with roleplay elements?
Well, that's a a really big question, which I'll just focus on the GM events. So right now we are not planning on the main servers of having a steady stream of GM events. That is something we've talked about on a roleplay server, potentially, or a different type of server, the kind that I've talked about, God, in the long ago past, as well as something that other developers and publishers have tried, like Sony. That's all up for discussion. And in terms of other dynamic elements, the most dynamic of elements is 3 realms going at it.
Odilvik asks, is there a possibility of some stand-in classes with basic skills to allow players to earn progression towards classes which aren't implemented at launch, like trainee spirit mages?
No thought about that at all. Would it be possible? Sure, but if we took the time to build that kind of a system in and make sure that it works and make sure it can't be abused, we might as well get the other classes in.
Drooged asks, did you ever go on vacation this year? Where?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I did. That's why I wasn't here 2 weeks ago. Well, it's a good story, so why not tell it? So 2 weeks ago, on this past Thursday, I went originally was going to go for a few days down to Ocean City, Maryland. It's one of the places I go very often. The weather, used to go very often. The weather was perfect, so I thought, okay, take off a few days, head down to OC. As Lady J and I are getting, closer and closer to OC, a sign goes. We see a sign. It says, "Special Speed Zone." And we're like, huh? All right, that's interesting. So we weren't sure what it meant. So we get there because we looked at Ocean City, see if anything was going on, and according to the calendar, there was nothing going on. Other than there was a wine fest, which usually doesn't attract the most raucous and crazy nor large crowd. So thought no problem. So John's walking over with something. Oh, good. Yeah, he lives. He was supposed to.
Oh.
Yeah, let him know he's supposed to send me a text.
I've been sending him nose puns.
Yeah, yeah. Remind him. Text.
Okay.
Supposed to tell me. Anyway, so yeah, kind of wondering. Thought maybe there was a parade or something like that, and get to the hotel, and we ask about it, and apparently there was an unsanctioned H2OI event. I don't know if you folks know what an H2OI event is. I suggest you look it up. It can be best summarized as loud, noisy, smelly, and definitely loud, noisy, more noisy, and even more noisy. Essentially, the goal is to have cars that make the most noise possible and cruise up and down the streets. Now, apparently, Ocean City was not happy with that, and they created a special task force to try to convince the H2OI guys not to show up. Well, that had absolutely zero effectiveness, and to help combat that, they called in every statey and every sheriff's department officer that they could and line the streets all day and night giving out tickets. So my first 3 days on the first real vacation I had in multiple years was while being surrounded by loud, noisy, more noisy cars, backfiring whenever possible, while driving through streets filled with people on the side in lawn chairs or just sitting there applauding the backfires. So yes, that was the first 3 days of my vacation, but when they left on Monday, I decided to take off another 2 days. So I actually had 3 days of very quiet and very nice relaxation when the weather was amazing in Ocean City. So it was an interesting week. I learned something quite new. I had not been familiar with the H2OI folks, and came back feeling very relaxed, since I really did spend most of that vacation either sleeping or being in the ocean or sitting by the ocean. So it was nice. It was fun. I love OC. I've been going down there for decades.
Ajadi wants to know why your vacation wasn't in the top 10-ish.
Oh, well, because that was 2 weeks ago. Should have been last week's. That I was off and, taking a few days. But the few days, like I said, turned into 2 extra days, which did make me very happy.
Piri Baby on the YouTube chat asks, please add some payment options. I would like to purchase the game, but PayPal and I are on a warpath.
Yeah, I can't blame you. We're going to add Stripe, certainly, no question about it, and we'll think about others as well. PayPal is one of those companies that just keeps getting in its own way in terms of our usability of it. They become quite frustrating for us as well, which is a real shame, especially considering their importance to the global payment market. So we'll see. We got to find the time. We got a lot of the integration done. We want to go forward with Stripe. It's just time. And I know you folks, most of you folks, would rather have us focus on getting, the game done versus another payment method. But it is on our list, and I hope we'll get it done early next year.
We're almost at the 5-minute warning, folks, so 6-minute warning.
And we can go a few extra minutes because I told a story about H2OI. H2OI, yes.
Strike would like a follow-up on a question from a Q&A way back when about a Christmas special build, and if we're going to do something like that with snowmen as NPCs.
Well, that'd be nice. I don't know if we'll have the time. I love special builds like that. I certainly would love to see that for us, but our focus is the game, the game, the game, the game, and as I think a few of our choices have indicated, and certainly where I've been spending my time, mostly in the last month, nothing could be clearer how important that is to us. Lots of interviews. If you're wondering why I said that, lots and lots of interviews.
Saint Pam says they're barely resisting asking what everyone knows they want to ask. But how are you?
Oh, I'm great. The vacation was desperately needed. I was certainly not at my wit's end, because that would be, a state that nobody here has actually seen me in. And that was around the end of the first month at Mythic after War launched. But I was getting closer and closer as the months went on, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't get to that state. But no, like I said, a week of sitting by the beach and watching the ocean, because I adore the ocean, just sitting there allowed me to relax. And the shocking thing, and the most shocking thing for me, was during that week I slept every single day except one, 8 to 10 hours. I haven't gone 8 to 10 hours a day for more, in consecutive nights or even in a week for I don't know how many years. So this was nice. It was unexpected. When I woke up the first morning in OC and looked at the clock and went, holy crap, that's 10 hours. So that was nice. That really, really helped. And no, all is good. Trying a different diet because the low carb was not working the way I wanted, and so trying something a little different. Mediterranean diet, kind of. See how that works. Plus, I needed to change it up anyway. I'd been on that for far too long. And no, all is good. I mean, I love where we're at in a whole bunch of ways that are not necessarily obvious to the players. Like I said, I've been spending lots of time interviewing candidates, so that is good. All is well.
Mythrunder says they were in the same city at the same time, didn't see MJ though.
Oh, sorry. What did you think of the noise? It was, and the cars. I tend to prefer, as no surprise, the classic car show week, which was the next week, because some of those cars are just awesome. I appreciate the work certainly that goes into, making your car into a giant noisemaker. But I much prefer the classic cars or the Corvette weekend, because there's some awesome vets that show up there.
Antediluvian asks, in the vein of siege mages, will mages throwing massive AoE damage spells cause friendly fire?
No plans on friendly fire yet. This is certainly something we've talked about. The potential for griefing is just too big. So, we could experiment with it on another server, and certainly we've talked about our equivalent of the Dread. So, I think there'll be, for those who want friendly fire and that sort of stuff, we will certainly have options.
Let's see. Odilvik asks, what new ideas, if any, popped into your mind relaxing by the pool?
Not a lot. I actually spent as much time as possible not thinking about CU. I was just trying to clear the head. Got some mental writing done on another graphic novel, which I've turned into words, which I still need to finish. I want to finish the last 2 chapters this weekend, but I really tried to spend as much time as possible really not thinking about CU. I turned off my email which I almost never do. And it worked. Again, I needed that break.
Myth Render says, MJ, I'm law enforcement, so I was there for that reason.
Oh, hey, you had a busy weekend, sir. I heard that, I don't know if it's true or not, the biggest ticket given that day or that weekend was $1,800 for somebody who was going way too fast. You know, I'm glad you folks were there. You helped keep things in check. Sorry, H2OI guys, but you know, I think it was necessary. And I hope that, you know, part of the problem with it, not that I have anything against the concept, but, you know, if it's unsanctioned and the town doesn't really want you there, and they, you know, certainly tried to make it clear to them, you know, then things should be done. It was very, you know, for people who weren't part of the group, didn't know about the group, there were a lot of upset people, I know, because of what was going on the roads, what was going on, you know, just in general. So, you know, it's tough. It's tough for law enforcement, I know, and it's also tough for vacationers, and it's tough, you know, for vacationers who are H2OI guys. So hopefully that stuff can be worked out, and, you know, it won't be such a surprise to people, no matter where the next time or in the other events that H2OI has.
Torch KC has a question that might be a nice one to end on. Torch KC asks, might be an often asked question, but aside from CU, which game would you say was your favorite to work on, and which one was your favorite to play?
Cool. And by the way, Myth, if you were, you know, since you were law enforcement, if you were on the roads, if you saw, not that I doubt you remember it now, but if you remember seeing a black Mustang convertible constantly as well going up and down the streets, though not with them, the H2OI guys, that was me. I think I was the only black convertible Mustang that I saw since it's not a car favored by the H2OI guys and gals. But yeah, if you saw a black Mustang convertible anytime that weekend, the odds are that it was me. So, favorite game to work on, favorite game to play. Favorite game to work. Let's start with a favorite game to play. That was a toss-up for me. I loved Silent Death. Played that a lot. Loved Aliens Online. Played that a lot. Certainly loved Dark Age of Camelot too, but as I've told the stories over the decades now, I couldn't actually play Dayak from home. Where I lived did not have any sort of decent internet connection, so I had to rely on AOL. And so playing Dark Age over that lovely system didn't end up, you know, working out for me. So I wish I could say my favorite one to play was Dark Age, but I couldn't play it from home, so it wasn't. So yeah, I think I would say that overall, I loved Aliens more, but it's a toss-up. I mean, I played a lot of Silent Death as well. Favorite one to work on? Well, that would be Dark Age, simply because as frustrating as it was at times, you know, like I've told the stories about the financial issues and, you know, pretty much extending every ounce of credit and more I had to make sure we could buy phones, for example, for CS. Other than stuff like that, it was really rewarding. And I don't mean financially. I mean, that certainly was, but that wasn't the point. The most rewarding thing of Dark Age was seeing the team that had worked so hard on the game be happy when the game came out and then was successful. You know, we were all ecstatic about it. We were ecstatic about the numbers. We were ecstatic of how well it worked. It was a really good time in the studio. Everyone had told us, and I mean everyone, with the exception of Vivendi. Thanks Phil O'Neill and Fezzer and the rest of you folks, that we were going to fail. I mean, everyone else was like, yeah, we don't think this game will succeed. You guys and gals have heard me tell the stories before. So to see that happen, the success, when everybody told me, I was either an idiot or that the studio couldn't do it, or my favorite line, of course, how could Mythic Entertainment succeed while everyone else had failed, other than the big studios. There's nothing more satisfying, and maybe it's a little bit petty of me, I don't know, probably a little bit, but there's nothing more satisfying to me when people tell me, how wrong, I am, especially when it comes to what, a team can do, and then the team goes out and does it. We had heard that many times during Mythic's existence, and, time after time, that small team did what nobody else, certainly that size, had accomplished, and, even much bigger teams and much more well-funded teams couldn't accomplish. So, I think that would give the nod to Dark Age. On the other hand, getting to work with Dean Devlin, whether it was on Godzilla Online or Independence Day or the Game Network, that was a lot of fun. I like Dean Devlin. He's a cool cat, fun to hang out with, fun to talk to, smart guy. And working on Hollywood, on Hollywood IP, can be satisfying. It can be frustrating as hell at times too. But working with him and his people was overall quite enjoyable. And this is no knock at all on my friends over at Games Workshop. I enjoyed immensely. Had an immense amount of fun working with them. Unfortunately, the last 2/3 of Warhammer's development was done under EA, and that had its own challenges. I'm not, bashing EA on this, because in a lot of ways they were, good to us, but it was challenging. And it was also a time that, my mom got sick, so it's kind of hard to say, hey, I had a good time while she, was battling the disease that eventually killed her. So that, would disqualify Warhammer. But yeah, I look back at the Mythic years, and I've said this all along, even when we were still struggling. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the team. We were doing, some great things in a time when people weren't, didn't believe in online games, and certainly didn't believe in the stuff we were doing. And that sort of us against the world, development can be quite satisfying, even if it's not all that financially rewarding. So yeah, that's a great question. Unless you've got something even better, Max.
I think we're good.
Then let's end on that, folks. Thank you very much for that. I don't think I've answered the question quite. I don't think that question has been asked quite that way before. So thank you for that. As always, folks, we thank you for your patience. We thank you for your support. Well, again, we will have a test this weekend. Work is going quite nicely again, which is super. We are getting really close to getting Coherent fully up and running, so we can rip out Ceph. And once that happens, the 64-bit client is just around the corner from that. And I don't mean around the corner down the long corridor, the long street that goes on for miles. It should not be that far away after, Ceph is ripped out. And that's going to be a great moment for us. Hiring goes well. Interviewing goes well, so that's all good. And other than a whole bunch of people being out today, it's been certainly a good week. So again, as always, we thank you for your patience. We thank you for your support. And I'll see many of you in the game this weekend. So have a good and safe Friday and weekend. And I believe I will see you next week. So that's it, and see you soon.
See you later.